A reading from the Gospel of John. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is," but others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see." And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on the Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He then said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked him, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason his parents said, "He is of age. Question him." So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to him, "This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and you are trying to teach us?" When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him. The one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshipped him. Then Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not also blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, 'We see,' so your sin remains." It might seem shocking to many Christians, but miracle workers were a dime a dozen in the first century. Regardless of whether they may have been legitimate or not, being a miracle worker wasn't what made Jesus stand out. It was the fact that he was a poor miracle worker. In first century Judaism, it was believed that if one was born poor, then either the person, the parents, or someone in the family line had sinned. So the idea that Jesus could do miracles as a poor person made Jesus quite noteworthy because it contradicted Jewish beliefs on sin and punishment. After all, not all Jews, like the Sadducees, for instance, believed in an afterlife in the first century. As a result, the only way for a person to receive judgment from God would be on earth, not in heaven. So when Jesus tells his disciples that the blind man or his parents had not sinned, that would have been a major questioning of Jewish beliefs at the time. After all, if God judged us in this life and not the next, then one's blindness must be earthly punishment because of sin. As a result, we see the parallels of Jesus and the blind man both being seen as having sinned because the former was born poor and the latter born blind. Yet Jesus was living proof that this belief was not true. So his declaring that the blind man or his parents had not sinned must have carried a lot of weight. After all, the proof was in the pudding. Jesus could do miracles and was born poor. So he or his family must not have sinned. Therefore, if Jesus and his parents didn't sin, then the blind man and his parents didn't sin either. This undoubtedly caused confusion to many because it questioned a major belief that Jews had taken for granted in the early first century. Eventually, however, this belief would fade away as more began to believe in an afterlife. So Jesus, being smarter than everyone else, was ahead of his time when he spoke with authority and certainty that people like the blind man had not sinned, resulting in his being born blind. And all people needed to know that he was right was by looking at Jesus himself, the poor Jewish peasant who shouldn't have been able to do miracles. Yet miracles were exactly what Jesus did.